It is one of the most intensely competitive congressional races, not just in Michigan, but in the nation, pitting incumbent Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin in the 7th District against State Senator Tom Barrett, the Republican from Charlotte. And you've probably seen some of the new ads that have been flying back and forth. We have enjoyed speaking with Congresswoman Slotkin from time to time here. It's only fair that we check in with Senator Tom Barrett this afternoon after he gets a major endorsement. Senator, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Guy. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Talk to me about this endorsement. It comes from a law enforcement group, which is, I think, by the day, crime and law enforcement seems to be growing. And we know that President Biden is trying to kind of take that issue away from Republicans. Let's talk about it.
Sure. The president certainly is desperate to, really shake the snow globe and confuse voters across the country and certainly across competitive congressional districts like here in mid-Michigan to try and confuse voters about the Democrats' record and how they've led to just a rampant increase in violent crime across our country. I'm proud that today we were able to announce that the Police Officers Association of Michigan, which is the largest umbrella organization of law enforcement professionals in Michigan, has endorsed my campaign for Congress. They know that I've been an ally in their cause. I am proud to back the blue, and today we're proud that the blue backs me and my campaign for Congress, and I couldn't be more proud of their endorsement. I'm very appreciative of the work they do. I have family in law enforcement, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the sacrifices they make to keep our communities safe.
We have seen prosecutors, specifically in two counties, Washtenaw and Ingham, liberalize their policies when it comes to charging on some illegal firearms and some narcotics charges. They're doing it to try to be, I think, racially sensitive in some cases. Interestingly, the Detroit News tried to assess whether those two counties have seen a drop in crime or an increase in crime, and the prosecutors wouldn't release their crime stats to the news. Do you have anything that shows that these liberal ideas actually can harm us?
Absolutely. So Ingham County is the county that surrounds Lansing. Lansing is a community inside of Ingham County. It's the central point of this congressional district where Congresswoman Slotkin and I are facing off this November. And Lansing, Michigan ranks as one of the most dangerous cities in America now. It was ranked just by the FBI statistics a year ago as the 9th most dangerous city in America. And it had a record-breaking number of murders last year in 2021 alone. So we absolutely know with empirical evidence that these so-called solutions by these far-left prosecutors, Democratic activists, progressive activists, don't work. They make communities less safe. And the point that you were trying to make about racial sensitivity or some other, metric of that regard, I think it misses the point that every person, regardless of their race or socioeconomic status, deserves to live in a community that is safe, where their kids can travel to school safely, where their kids can play outside without fear of people driving past. I mean, we did a press conference today to announce this big law enforcement endorsement, and we were surrounded by community law enforcement members from across this congressional district. And as we were wrapping up, this is 9:15 in the morning, somebody rode a motorcycle in front of the parking lot where we were at. They must have been going 100 miles an hour down a surface street on a Lansing community. I mean, these are things that make communities less safe. They know that the police are not allowed to chase offenders that are fleeing a scene. They know that they're not likely to get prosecuted to the full extent that the law allows. And that lack of accountability has led to an uptick and a surge in violent crime that is most pronounced in communities like Lansing here in Michigan.
Well, and it's also, these people that if you don't have cash bail, for instance, you're not releasing them in many cases back to the suburbs. You're releasing them back to communities of color that are already plagued with crime. So,
right.
You may be sensitive,
they're predatory,
but you are literally victimizing them. There was a huge bust today of so-called rainbow fentanyl coming across the southern border, and certainly tougher immigration enforcement would help with that. But is it also, in terms of trade policy, time to get tough with Mexico and say, look, get this under control or you will face some harsh trade repercussions?
Absolutely. We need a full court press as it relates to securing our border. This is something that is a no-brainer. I mean, we have a border where we have record number of illegal border crossings under this administration. And with the surge in drugs that are manufactured in China but come across our border because of no enforcement, right into every community across America. Every single town and every single state in the United States is now a border community because of this effect.
Mm-hmm.
And fentanyl, devastatingly, now represents the leading cause of death of people age 18 to 45 in America. The leading cause of death, people my age in the United States, is opioid overdose, usually as a direct result of fentanyl being laced into other things that people are purchasing. There's a lot of contributing factors to that, but the final straw that breaks the camel's back is the fentanyl surge that comes across the border. Alyssa Slotkin just voted to hire 87,000 new IRS agents and not a single additional Border Patrol agent at all. That is an absolute disastrous misplaced priority. 87,000 IRS agents is more people than you can fit into Spartan Stadium on a sold-out Saturday afternoon game.
Look, I understand what you're saying. I don't know that I would call Alyssa Slotkin certainly a progressive. And when she was on this program back on May 18th, she talked about sending more resources to the border, both to target cartels, but also to help bolster our enforcement there. And she was on the record going against relaxing Title 42. Here's what she had to say. Cut 4.
One of the bills sets up an intelligence unit that looks particularly at those cartels and understanding their trends, how they're organized, their money, et cetera. And then the other one is just giving more resources down at the border for not only our customs and border folks, but all kinds of government folks, so that they can deal with these surges in particular. And we're going through kind of a yearly surge right now that's particularly bad.
She bucked the Biden administration on Title 42. She certainly has shouted down Nancy Pelosi on the need for greater transparency when it comes to stock sales, things like that. Can you really paint her as being kind of an ivory tower liberal?
Oh, absolutely. Alyssa Slotkin went to the most elite private boarding school in the Midwest at Cranbrook. In fact, my school where I went, we would take a field trip to Cranbrook every year because of the elite amenities that they had there. She is among the most elite in our society. She's Ivy League educated. She is an ivory tower elitist. And if you look not at her rhetoric of what she says, anybody can go on the radio and say whatever they want. Mm-hmm. Look at her actual voting record. Her voting record is her principal responsibility as a member of Congress. 100% voting record with Joe Biden. 98% with Nancy Pelosi. These are not figures in dispute. So when you look at what she says versus what she does, she talks like Joe Manchin, but then turns around and votes like Nancy Pelosi. So the talk is cheap. Look at her actual voting record, and the results of that are the misery that families are dealing with across this district and across our country. Record high inflation, highest ever in 40 years. Surging energy costs, a border that's wide open, that's unsecured, fentanyl pouring in, and rising crime across the country. These are all attributable to decisions that have been enabled by Alyssa Slotkin. So she may talk a big game around election time to try and poach votes by not sounding like Rashida Tlaib, but that doesn't make her less progressive. Her voting record is irrefutably among the most liberal as a member of Congress.
Help me understand that this billboard that has been hoisted over Lansing that criticizes you for voting against what was a bipartisan bill to provide incentives for a number of manufacturing concerns, but specifically for GM's battery plants in Delta Township and Lake Orion. Was that a vote of conscience? They're labeling you as anti-manufacturing. Help me understand it.
Sure, it absolutely was a vote of conscience, but it was actually a vote, too, of reasoned and sound principle and practice. I have voted against these corporate welfare incentive deals, over 99.9% of them, since I was first elected to the legislature. It's a commitment I made to the people of my district and a commitment that I intend to keep. I'm not somebody who says one thing like Alyssa Slotkin and then votes differently once I'm in office, as she does. These incentives, and the evidence of this you can see just with the recent development by Ford. We give a $101 million check to Ford to create 3,000 jobs. They cash the check, and before the ink is dry on that check that they cash, they announce layoffs of 3,000 people. So the evidence of this is that these do not work, and they are not the best use of taxpayer money. This General Motors incentive deal is going to put taxpayers on the hook for over $160,000 for every single job that they are claiming to create. And now they've changed the goalpost of how many jobs they actually intend to produce under this incentive deal. So $160,000 of taxpayer dollars for every single job created. We're taking taxes from all of the different individual taxpayers and all the businesses that pay into the state treasury. And then we're selecting a very few number of recipients that have the leverage and the lobbying to influence the legislature to get this corporate incentive back. And I will point out that while the bill passed with bipartisan support, it also had bipartisan opposition because there are Republicans and Democrats of conscience that disagree with how we do this. And if you look at the metrics of what these corporate decision makers look at, incentives rank low on their list of priorities. In other factors like infrastructure, tax code, regulatory environment, and really the talent pipeline, the ability to have talent fill these positions is their foremost factor that they look at. When we overlook those issues and put all of our money into incentives, we're taking away money we could be spending on infrastructure and other things that rank far higher on that priority list.
It is a debate, given what we've seen from Ford and the layoffs that followed. Senator Tom Barrett, we appreciate the discussion. We look forward to more of them. For the record, I married a Cranbrook grad. So I may be in an ivory tower, and so may my kids, but we kick the liberals out of our tower.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful campus when I would go there on a field trip. So it was great. I'm glad rich people can go there.
I just had to pull your chain a little on that. Thanks so much, and you take care on the campaign trail, and we look forward to future conversations.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so long. Senator Tom Barrett. It's going to be an interesting race there, and we'll stay on top of it for you, and we'll be back.